Thanks for tuning in to Gin and Tantra. As always, please subscribe and share. We once again have the utmost pleasure in having on Professor Robert Thurman. He is a talented popularizer of the Buddhist teachings and the first Westerner to be ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a Tibetan Buddhist monk. A charismatic speaker and author of many books on Tibet, Buddhism, art, politics, and culture, Professor Thurman was named by the New York Times as the leading American expert on Tibetan Buddhism and was awarded the prestigious Padma Shri Award in 2020 for his help in recovering India's ancient Buddhist heritage. Time magazine chose him as one of the 25 most influential Americans in 1997, describing him as a larger-than-life scholar activist destined to convey the Dharma, the prestigious teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, from Asia all the way to America. His own search for enlightenment began while he was a university student at Harvard. After an accident in which he lost the use of an eye, Professor Thurman left school on a spiritual quest throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. He eventually found his way to India, where he first saw His Holiness the Dalai Lama. After learning Tibetan and studying Buddhism, Professor Thurman became a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and some years later, however, offered up his robes when he realized he could be more effective in the American equivalent of a monastery, the university, and thus returned to Harvard to finish his PhD. A quote from Professor Thurman: "I invite you to embrace a new reality. I invite you to awaken to the infinite life you already have, no matter what your worldview. I invite you to take up responsibility for your own destiny. I invite you to take advantage of your priceless humanness to make a definitive turn towards ultimate security, complete freedom, and unbounded happiness." In this episode of Gin and Tantra, we discuss Professor Thurman's new book, Wisdom is Bliss, and a link can be found in the description of this video if you are interested in purchasing it. We do a sort of verbal Rorschach test with Professor Thurman and get his thoughts on a wide variety of topics in the book and so much more, including the importance of education and the suffering of change, experiencing all gain and no pain, having fun on the spiritual path, happiness pushing people away from positions of power, the orgasmic potency, and some plans for West Virginia. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Gin and Tantra, spirituality with a twist. The podcast that takes Tantrism, Buddhism, Taoism, Sufism, Kabbalism, Shamanism, Chinese medicinism, and all of the other isms we've been influenced by, and blends them into a tall, crisp, cool cocktail your spirit has been longing for.
I want you to get together.
Now, isn't that refreshing?
I want you to get together.
Hey, fellow GNTers, those of us who like our spirituality with a twist. Well, as you will know from the intro to the episode, we are once again joined by, I'm going to say, both the blissfully wise and wisely blissful Robert Thurman, Professor Thurman, this time to discuss his new book, Wisdom is Bliss. So great to see you again, Professor Thurman.
That's right. That's the book, Wisdom is Bliss.
There it is.
It really is bliss too. I'm so happy. My editor, wonderful editor at Hay House, she had it come out. The publication date was my 80th birthday.
Oh, fantastic.
So it was a really great birthday present to see it finally come out. So, okay.
So we read
So
it
here
all.
I am,
We read it all.
Wise and wise, blissful, but actually often I'm not blissful and often I'm stupid. But other than that, especially when I talk about it, I get a little bit blissful and a little bit wise.
Well, the book is
Talk
full of
myself
it.
into it.
Full of all kinds of wisdom and bliss. So it's a fascinating book, and it was an interesting thing. Daniel and I both finished it, and we were reading away.
I'm so good.
We felt
But
like
did you-
students. We were back
yeah.
in the day being students in our undergrad years, reading away like
Mhm.
crazy.
Like crazy,
And,
getting ready for the book report.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating book. It's, you know, an authentic presentation and explanation of the Buddhist Eightfold Path, but then you sort of use it as a vehicle and a starting off point to present what I see as a vision for spirituality for modern people overall. So it's really wonderful. And then, you know, you talk about, for our purposes, to talk about the entire Eightfold Path in one conversation, even if we were to talk about, you know, one of the Eightfold Path would probably eat up a whole episode. So we thought what we would do is just throw out some of the key words, I think, and concepts in the book. Daniel described it as a spiritual Rorschach test. We'll throw you some words and you can share your impressions and experiences of those words. And that would be a way of doing the interview. So,
all right.
What struck me is the title. And I have to say, you're saying wisdom is bliss. I'm so immersed in this Buddhist worldview that I was like, yeah, wisdom is bliss. I'm in. And I stared at it for a week, you know, without it hitting me that, wait a minute, this is a play on words of ignorance is bliss. The classic American phrase. Like, it didn't even occur to me that there was a play on words there. And then it hit me, oh, that's really clever, because my feeling of American culture a lot of times is there's this attitude of don't look too close at anything. Just don't look too close. Kind of like the old William Burroughs book, Naked Lunch. Don't look too close what's on the plate. Just keep your eyes closed. Yeah. And I was wondering how you thought about that, because the title seemed to me then to be an invitation to ask people to like overcome that resistance of looking close and now really start looking in a more, I think one of your other favorite words is realistic way.
That's right. That's right. Realism. They thought for a while that they would make that the title, because that's one of my slogans, you could say, is that Buddhism is realism. And that is the way I understand it, because what Buddha's message to the world was from his own attainment is that reality itself is bliss. And therefore it's wisdom that knows that reality by becoming it. And that's why wisdom is bliss. In other words, that's but what's the problem that I was addressing here in writing this book in this way, which is a little bit going out on a limb in the Buddhist world, which is why I say it's not really about Buddhism, this book, it's more about Buddhism. You know, I mean that because the Dalai Lama, I follow him, and he's my teacher and friend since almost 60 years now, 57 actually, and exactly. And he is against the idea that anybody should convert anybody to anything, because being nominally belonging to this or to that is not that particularly helpful necessarily, unless you belong to where you grew up at, and then it might be helpful that you belong because it makes your friends and relatives and grandma particularly happy, you know, that you're still wherever she thinks you should be, wherever she is.
Well, that's why I confirmed in Catholicism. That was from my grandma.
That's right. So, so he says, just keep everyone should keep their grandmother's religion. But everyone should educate themselves on the other hand. And you can, and different traditions that are thought of as religious often have curricula to educate yourself. And the secular humanism, which he considers a world religion of 1 billion followers, approximately, you know, sort of non-religious, who they call themselves non-religious, therefore they're secular. But he considers their own calling to be a religion, really, you know, adopted with that same fervor that people adopt a religion, although it's an ideology. And he thinks they should keep that one if that's good for them, but all in all should be educated. And then the Buddhist tradition came from Buddha's own original Buddhism on that morning when he attained enlightenment, when he said he had discovered that reality itself is bliss. It is deathless. It is uncreated. It's always been that way. It's just a gas, you know. He just really, James Brown is in an entertaining mode. He said exactly what Buddha said, you know, I feel good and I knew that I would. and that's what Buddha really said. But then he said, well, you know, folks, like Socrates said, he said, the unenlightened life, when you don't know what you do, what you are, who you are, where you are, and why you are, when you don't know that, then you're actually going to be unhappy. And you're not going to be happy because you won't be satisfied. You'll have pleasure what you call pleasure, but then you won't be happy because it won't last. It's called the suffering of change in his way.
Yeah.
And you also, it won't be enough. You will think of some better way it could have been, and you'll be dissatisfied with it. So he said, but then people, unfortunately, they fastened on that one, and they said, oh, Buddhists, oh yeah, they want you to be miserable. That's the whole Buddhist thing.
Mhm.
And I recently read someone, I won't say the name, but very wonderful, lovely person who studied a lot of different religions and has her own kind of view of things. Very helpful and sweet and pleasant one. Love is it, and so on. But somehow and has a lot of Buddhist friends, but somehow thinks that what Buddha discovered is that you have to annihilate yourself. You extinguish yourself. What nirvana is you just let go of everything and you're gone, you're extinguished. And that's so wrong. That's so absolutely not correct.
You know what struck me in the book?
That gets extinguished is suffering gets extinguished. When you discover the reality, suffering is gone. You realize that suffering is an illusion, and that the play of illusion, and that doesn't mean you leave the world of suffering in the sense that other people who you care about are still there. So you haven't extinguished yourself at all. You've become, in fact, everything. You feel that you are everything, and you do that in a blissful way. And the way you do that is you not just with your conceptual mind, because the other neat thing about Buddha was he said, I feel great, I really do, and I know everything, but I'm so sorry I can't explain it to you. He said that because it's inexpressible. It's such a surprise. You just can't imagine. Amazing grace, they say, and that's right. It is amazing grace. It's so amazing that you never would have expected that you could be that blissful, But now the key is how do you get it? You melt into it. When you don't get it, it gets you. But when it gets you, it doesn't extinguish you. It kindles you to infinite life.
Mm.
And that's what, there is a view that some Buddhists even have that somehow they're just seeking extinction because human beings have a strong escapist streak. When they're sensitive and they're bothered about things, they kill themselves or they seek extinction. Certain kinds of soporific drugs who are addicted to them, they're trying to annihilate their consciousness, And of course, when you're being drilled, you want to be unconscious, when the dentist is drilling, So that's normal. Pain we really don't like, but but reality is there's no pain, and everything is gained though. No pain and everything gained. That's the thing.
Well, it's really fascinating because one of the other words that jumped out in the book for me is definitely like fun. And I wrote it in my notes with like an exclamation point. So just the idea that you're
well,
really
that's the thing.
explain this idea of fun.
I have another friend who shall be unnamed, but is a wonderful guy. And he was really going off lately. He has in his writing, he's a writer on joy. And he's really got joy and he loves it. And it's great. Joy is really great. But then he was ranking on fun. He was like, oh, who needs fun? That's a child. Oh, that's fundamentalism and that, blah, blah. He was going on about fun. But then he was going on talking about the joy of children. Well, when are they joyful? When they had fun. So, I decided I was going to rehabilitate fun. But also I'm fun loving. So that's the thing. Why do we have to do without fun? Naturally we will. And that's the way of helping people cheer up. Another title I thought of, but the publisher didn't like it, is it's too vulgar. I can't even say that. But it has an acronym, CTFU. That's the acronym. And the first two words are cheer the. That's my message. Cheer the.
Yeah.
Exclamation point at the end.
That's right.
Yeah.
And because, here's the thing. We're having a terrible time. We have lunatics in power all over the world, not just in our own government. And we have, there's a few good people, but they're drowned out by the loonies. And although we're trying to change that now, which is we should. But the point is, and then all the countries, but that's only because the happier people are not power hungry. So they don't tend to become the leaders. The leaders are miserable people who think they'll be happy if they control everybody else and prevent anybody else from having more fun than them. And meanwhile, they can't have fun because they're so uptight. And so therefore they rise to the power. And then they ruin everything. So we have to have, we need people who are having a good time, but who cheerily want to help those really unhappy people retire and go cheer up themselves by not having big responsibility, which they don't know how to wield for the benefit of anyone, even themselves.
Mm.
So that's my theory of why we're really in a good place on the planet, because there are so many more happy people, but that's hidden from us by the fact that the leadership everywhere is a bunch of weirdos who are really frustrated, and they've reached this pinnacles of power, like they have $1 billion mansions down on the Black Sea, or they live in the old Chinese emperor's the country club. And meanwhile they're even more miserable than ever, so then they cause more problems.
This kind of like fits into some of the American idea of like retirement and almost waiting until you retire to then start living your life. Like you work your entire life just to be happy at the last, few years, and that everything else before that's kind of a slog. And all of a sudden, now I have all the time in the world, but most people haven't cultivated anything within themselves. Maybe they have a hobby or maybe not.
That's right. And they can retire. And meanwhile, some corporate raider probably has come in and trashed their pension fund. and they go back to like working like that woman. And what was that movie? That lady living in a trailer who had little jobs in a Walmart or in an Amazon warehouse.
Oh yeah, I forgot the name of that movie.
Hanging out in the desert out there in Arizona.
It came out last year, I believe.
Yeah, that was really like the nomads.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one yet. I heard of it.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant thing, really. But so there was no pension fund for her, so she didn't have a retirement, but she found a little community out in the desert briefly, But that's a terrible situation because of again, these unhappy people think that they'll be happy when they have billions of dollars. And then they prove how miserable they are, because the minute they get that many billions, they lose their family, because they think that's not fun enough. And then they leave for Mars. And they're planning to go up there and they're going to have French fries with Matt Damon in a Quonset hut. They're not serving French fries to their employees, but they're going to have French fries themselves. And Matt Damon was growing potatoes there, right, while he was waiting for the rescue.
Yeah, I think. Shit potatoes is the right term.
Is that what they called them?
Well, because he needed to use his feces in order for fertilizer in that movie.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
That part I missed that part.
Yeah.
At least there'll be soil. That's the Chinese agricultural specialty.
At least there'll be some use for like those people's bullshit. Now they'll have use for it, right?
That's right.
Use for their shit. Yeah.
That's right.
So what struck me in the book, Professor Thurman, was
nobody has taught Buddhism as really fun and happiness, and you don't even have to join as a religion. And that's the key thing. And you can keep with grandma's religion, but you can help her lighten it up. Do you know what I mean? As well, once you learn a little something about how your mind works, you can lighten it up.
It struck me that there's kind of a ground path result part of what you're saying there too, that in a way, this is kind of a Buddhist way of framing things, right? The ground, the path, and the result.
Well, yeah.
And it's kind of saying like the ground itself is this sea of bliss, and you use different terms through that throughout the book. That's the ground. And the result will be eventually you'll get it. You don't get it now, but you'll get it someday.
Yes.
And then there's a path in between to connect those things. And I have to say that like that's its own bliss and fun too, in the sense that you get to learn about yourself and the people around you and what the meaning of things are. And there's a joy in that. Yeah, and I don't know if that's always presented that way.
Fantastic. They're amazing. People are, if you take time to really observe them and really see their own inner wisdom and inner like contentment and inner like solid, like stability and stuff. People are just amazing. They really are incredible. And we normally just rush by them, know their name, and then we don't look twice,
I was reflecting on my own experience with this. When I first started practicing, my first experiences were in Zen. And I had some
Oh,
great
yes,
Zen
great.
masters from Japan that I studied with.
Wonderful. I love Zen.
Yeah. And it was interesting though, because when I look back at my own psychology, as I was reading your book, I was thinking about this and I was going, I wasn't thinking about this as fun. It became fun as I did it. But there was a
Yes.
part of me that almost felt like an odd American guilt. I felt like all my other friends are off working their hard jobs and doing their hard things. And I felt like this vaguely guilty feeling, like I should be out in some corporate setting feeling crappy. And here I am, almost like I felt some odd feeling of guilt or something. It was strange looking back. And I did feel kind of a bodhicitta. I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna try to do this so I can help other people. I had
Good.
some of that feeling,
Good.
and that helped me feel less
That's
guilty.
really good.
But I felt a
call it
little guilty.
Spirit of enlightenment.
Yeah.
I don't mind people using the word bodhicitta, but what drives me crazy is that English-speaking people write bodhi, C-I-T-T-A. And
Oh.
nobody will say cha unless they're Italian. They're going to say bodhicitta or bodhicitta. And yet they won't put an H there because in Sanskrit transliteration, you're supposed to just put a C because there is a CH where you aspirate, you practically spit to say that. but it is just, anyway, never mind. So spirit of enlightenment, yeah, good for you. That's really great, Eric. So you did good Zen. And you had a few satoris there, the guilt satori, and you had I'm not in the corporate office satori. That's really good.
Well, it was sort of interesting because I don't know how often you feel like you see that in students, but there was this little feeling like I'm not being, I'm not doing what maybe what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not, and so is that something you see Americans experiencing? Is that something you feel like you see in students? They feel a little
that's
guilt?
part of the cheer up. I can't tell you how many people just lately I've met who are doing different things. I'm about to open, I've been very dawdling the last step, but I'm about to open a Substack account to make a newsletter to people,
Nice.
And then all the people helping me, and a lot of people that I knew, they've just quit their job. Everyone has quit their job. They're giving all this extra unemployment benefit and so forth, but then it's over now. But people are not coming back to whatever kind of regular road work they were doing, and they're somehow that they're looking for more. They've had a retreat, what I call the coronapocalypse, coronapocalypse. They've had the coronapocalypse, and they've been on a retreat, and they looked for their bigger purpose in living, and they want to be lit. They want to live, so they're not rushing back. Some have to temporarily, but then they want to stay and work from home. It's like we really had a change here, thanks to this, what has been a catastrophe, of course, for those who lost their life prematurely. That's really terrible. But on the other hand, it really is bad and was unnecessary and all that. But on the other hand, for everyone else, it's been a wonderful retreat and a rediscovery of what life is about in a way.
Well, you mentioned Viktor Frankl in your book at one point, the great.
What's that?
You mentioned Viktor Frankl in your book at one point, the great, psychologist, psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned him in the book, and it's interesting because he's talking really about meaning. And we've done episodes of the podcast on him. And, I think that's what you're talking about there. I think it's a lot of people had this time to self-reflect, and it's partially like, I don't know if I'm enjoying my life. So that's the fun part. But it was also maybe the part where you're like, I don't know if I'm finding this meaningful anymore. The things that seem meaningful don't seem meaningful anymore. Maybe that's a little silver lining in a cloud, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He of course, he was in a concentration camp. What a terrible situation he was in, but he found a meaning in being alive there and living there anyway, and standing up for his own inner freedom. That's how he made it through, and that's really, I really admire such people. I don't think I could make it. I would really freak out.
Well, he even talks about,
I just don't think I have that kind of guts, although one thing I can say, one thing that I've come, since I see Buddha as a scientist who discovered that the nature of life is bliss, and that the energy, the vital energy that is our health and life is a bliss energy that we all have. And cultures tend to suppress it in us in order to make us more manageable and hide death from us so that they'll get us working away in some treadmill, version of duty. And And Buddha rebelled against it, and he said, no, everyone has the right not only to pursue happiness, but to be happy. And they can find it because that is their reality. And when they find that within their reality, they become naturally loving, they're naturally helpful to others, and they will naturally do whatever it takes to keep the society going and people fed, and avoid violence with others and so on. And so there's a much better way of going about it. And that view has been gradually prevailing slowly against all the military crazies, male chauvinist, patriarchal societies everywhere. And finally, we're getting close to something really great, I personally think. In the Tibetan prediction, Indian and Tibetan prediction, it's about only 400 more years to go.
Right around the corner.
To go, and we'll be past Armageddon, and type of Armageddon type of thing. Armageddon being like hundreds of years long of different world wars and things. But I don't agree with that. I think they're hiding the date. I think it's going to be maybe 30, 40 years, basically. I think it's or even sooner. Actually, in the 60s, I thought it was next week. Constantly.
This is your.
But now I think maybe a few more years. But maybe what Kurzweil calls the singularity. But instead of being downloaded into robots, which would be really boring, he would never be saying that if he ever watched Doctor Who.
With the little exterminate those little guys. Those little guys.
Nobody, what nonsense being downloaded to robots. Who wants to do that?
The Cybermen too. That was the other big villain, right?
Yeah,
that's like
horrible.
The two villains are that.
Doctor Who is really has to deal with all these fantasies of these engineers, who want to engineer themselves some sort of immortality, which is crazy, Although you might be able to do it if you become hyper conscious and you can go through death, retaining your continuum of joyfulness and happiness and lovingness and nonviolent, sort of gentle interconnectedness. And you can, and that's a good thing about the Buddhist education, super educations, as I put in the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 3 super educations. That's what I have in there. But so anyway, I love this. I really like my subtitle too, the 4 friendly fun facts.
Oh, that's the kind of thing about the reframing the
what's that?
Reframing the 4 noble truths that everyone associates with suffering, and let's flip it and make it into something that seems more fun and friendly.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
I learned about fun facts recently from a friend of mine who was the CEO of a toy company, his own toy company that he founded. And then he semi-retired by becoming the executive chairman. And there was a dinner where everybody had to tell their fun fact, which I had never done, and I didn't know if I even had one with that. So I was waiting to see what other people would say. And then he said, my fun fact, he said, is that I'm the executive chairman of my company. And everybody's looking, what's fun about that? Then he said, well, the thing is, unless you think that's not fun, what you should know is to be the executive chairman of a company, even one that you founded, he said, is like presiding over a cemetery. There are many people below you and no one is listening. Isn't that brilliant? I just love it. My fun fact was not nearly that good, so I decided I'm going to write my fun fact. And I was already working on it. At the time, my working title for this book was Buddhas Have More Fun. Not Buddhists. I know so many grim Buddhists who think that nirvana is misery embraced, but no. It's so Professor Thurman, Buddhas have more fun.
How did you break out of that for yourself? Did you have any of that feeling at the beginning? Oh, Buddhism is some kind of almost stoic thing I was going to slog through.
I had a challenge from a friend of mine who has passed away, again, who should be unnamed, very good friend, really wonderful guy, artist, and had a lot of fun himself in the 60s, as some of us did. And he said to me, oh, nirvana, who wants it? He said, the bliss, the fun is when you're a little bit tense and uptight, and then you break free of that, and it's the release that is the bliss. And so if you're permanently released, well, that's boring, he said. And he actually had an image for it. He said, it would be like the entire universe, all of life, was just one big giant jar of Vaseline. So I lived my Buddhist studies for 40 years since then, under the challenge of that thing about maybe it's not more fun to be nirvana, maybe it's some sort of extrapolation from fun into some sort of ultimate thing that's really beyond fun and no fun, or something rather than fun. And so I was waiting, I didn't have an answer. And then I finally, maybe 20 years ago, I kind of got that. I got this one clue, you see, because a Buddha is defined as someone who masters death and who discovers that death is where when death occurs is where you touch the full blast of the life force, and it's more than a particular body can manage. And of course, it usually happens to people when their body can't even manage walking around. But the idea that we're going to be just inside our little skin and our sense anchor of our sense experiences, and then we're going to control what's around us to make it nice, and then keep away any really horrible, like A-bombs or hurricanes or tornadoes or whatever it might be, terrorists or regular idiots. And but that's really a losing proposition in the long run, and so what death is defined as in the Buddhist science, in the science developing from these enlightened people, is where you release from the body and you feel the full force of the life force is everything that made your body and every body. And the more you've sort of prepared yourself for that, then you know to be frightened. The ordinary person is frightened and wants immediately to resume control, and then they go into the bardo, as the Tibetans talk about, and where they're trying to find another similar body to the old one. And but the people who are the Buddha, who's concentrated on opening up, giving it up, letting go, then they let go of everything. Then they become everything. Then they are one with everything. And then it's not just. Then a lot of people mistakenly think it's you become everything, and you find that everything is nothing but just vast empty space, because the Buddha mentioned emptiness. So they think you're just all alone in empty space, and then you don't feel guilty about your friends still in the corporate thing, because in some way you're not even there.
The whole thing is an illusion, so don't worry about it. It's one big illusion.
You left them out, because you're kind of not there. You're just like infinity. Yeah. And that's a great experience, but that's not the final thing, because that's pure freedom in a way. It's an experience of pure freedom, and there's a release when you reach it. But then, because you bring a momentum with you of reflective self-awareness, although it's sort of suppressed when you first blast out, but then you need to get free from freedom. And then you barrel right on through, and then suddenly everything is back. And everyone is back, but now there's no barrier between you and all of it. You're the vast interconnectedness of all of it. And so then I was stuck. Well, maybe that's so boring because it's just all one flat thing or something, Then I realized, wait a minute, no, because so many of the people you love, and you discover you love a lot more than you knew you loved, that they are not enjoying it that same way. They don't feel completely free where they are. So then you realize you have the ability, you're there with everyone in every place. And of course, it's an unimaginable degree of, it's actually, the only illustration of it that I can resort to was in a Star Trek movie where Frank Converse, he was the actor, and he was acting the lieutenant somebody. And they encountered this giant computer that had gone berserk called V'ger.
V'ger, yeah, that's Star Trek 1. V'ger.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay,
yeah, I think it's Star Trek 1.
V'ger, and V'ger wants to know everything because that was its mission, its purpose. But it's devouring everything to know it, and it's destroying everything. But she has a nice voice, V'ger. Yes,
she's very pretty too. I think the actress who ends up being V'ger's voice. Yeah, very charming, pretty actress.
I'm going to eat your spaceship. I'm going to eat the planet Earth and the home base of the Federation in San Francisco, in that wonderful place near the Golden Gate Bridge. And but it's nothing personal. I just want to know what it is. And the one thing I don't know is what it's like to be human. And they said, well, wait, if we can give you that knowledge, will you then leave the Earth alone and you won't have to devour anything? Yeah, oh yeah, sure, that'll be fine. So then Frank Converse, which was the name of the actor who was a friend of mine.
Oh,
So I
okay.
remember it. And we had worked together in in Nantucket in a restaurant in the summer, years before. And Frank said he volunteered, Captain Kirk, I will merge with the computer and then she can know me. And then Spock says, no, I'll do a Vulcan mind. No, she didn't want Spock in his Vulcan mind thing. That was not happening. She wanted to know what he meant to be human. No, I'll merge. He says, it's okay. I don't know what happened to me, but I'll merge. So then he goes over and he sort of hugs V'ger. I don't remember what was the actual posture. The love making. He makes love with V'ger, basically.
Oh, he probably does. That's probably true.
I don't know what it is, but he embraces her and she embraces him. And then there's this like, the thing, she dissolves into the vastness in joy. And sort of there's a voice like, bye, now I know it's great. I won't bother anybody. But unfortunately, Frank gives up his previous life, but he says, don't worry, guys, I'm happy too.
It's a very of a tantric story.
That's what it's like. Okay, now wait. So that's what it's like. So
Professor Thurman, I just have to give away the punchline. V'ger is the movie's 40 years old or something. It's Voyager. It's it's the satellite that went out, and it just like you find at the end, it's like the letters are missing.
23rd or 24th century. That's right. So my point is that's what enlightenment is like. The merging between a supercomputer and a human in a loving embrace, and then sort of feeling yourself to be everywhere and in the bliss of everything. But then that awareness of everything includes being aware that others are not that happy. So then, and there seems to be an endless supply of them, and then uncountable. So then the fun is helping them find their release. And so then I finally had to answer to my old friend with his jar of Vaseline that there's more fun because there are more other people who are miserable, and you Buddhas have more fun making them have fun. But you can't make them have fun. That's the problem. You can't make people have fun. Because if you try to make them, then they will resist and they'll get more uptight. You can only do whatever it takes, whichever dance, whatever artistic work, whatever anything it takes to get them to feel safe enough to kind of open up their own inner softness, their own inner streaming, as their orgasmic potency, as Wilhelm Reich would call it, who I also refer to in the book a lot, right?
Yeah.
And Wilhelm Reich, he's the famous writer of The Function of the Orgasm, and what he calls orgasmic potency, which is not the same as ordinary genitally organized orgasm. It's something more. It's total, whole body, brain and throat and heart and navel, as well as the active parts, and so he, without being a yogi and without knowing tantric yoga or anything, Wilhelm Reich somehow sussed that out by some natural ability he had or awareness that he had. Anyway, point is, so that's the more fun, you see. So I finally was ready to answer my friend that more fun is everybody else's fun, which you become the sort of catalyst for. You can't make them have fun. If you tried to bliss bomb other beings, that would harm them because they would resist the flood of big bliss energy. They wouldn't see it as bliss; they would see it as invasive.
That was one of Wilhelm Reich's points, that like that kind of bliss feels overwhelming to people, and they just don't. They're almost like overloaded circuits. They don't have the ability to handle it, so they'll flinch.
That's right.
So you can't force it on people,
and then they'll kill the source of it. That his great emotional plague theory. Yeah, because they have been indoctrinated and they have been kind of coerced by the culture, some militaristic culture or some male chauvinist dominating power-oriented culture, and they've been to sort of shut down their inner sensitivity that the human being has, and he has a brilliant thing like the military posture. You jam your chin into your neck, you suck in the diaphragm so you can't feel anything there, and you rip your pelvis back in a sort of version of upright posture, so that you don't feel. Point is not to feel fear for the military person, but then you can also feel the streaming of genuine melting in a loving embrace with someone, so you can't enjoy it. And then when you meet someone who is radiating that aura of orgasmic potency, like a Christ figure or somebody, then that makes you have these inner streamings that make you feel like you're maybe going to pee in your pants or something, you're going to lose control of things, and then you freak out and you want to destroy that person,
I have to say,
some mystic. That's a brilliant thing of his,
I have to say,
Yeah.
Dr. Thurman, you're reading my notes here because I wanted to talk about the emotional plague, but also I
Oh,
have
good.
to say that, like, as an academic person, I stick that book, Function of the Orgasm, in every class I can. Anytime I
Oh,
can
yeah,
have an
isn't it
excuse to
wonderful?
include it,
He
I'll
really
stick
was
it
the
in.
greatest, he really
Yeah.
was the greatest. And he ran into this sort of fascism everywhere. McCarthyite fascism in America, Hitlerite in Germany, and Leninite in Russia. And he thought at first the Russian Revolution would lead to like people opening up, doing yogas and things. And then they just completely betrayed that fake promise, but they're because of the violence, the violence is the end of it, Anyway, yeah, that's awesome. You that, Eric. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
So,
That's
you
really
know,
awesome.
like,
Why are you wearing that hat, by the way?
oh, you always ask me this, Professor Thurman.
Well, not
You
always.
ask me
One,
why-
one time previously.
Well, the one previous time, so 2 times always by
That's
my
right. Okay.
count.
Fair enough.
It's just for my sloppy COVID hair. It just makes it a little bit more simple. Because we're going to be on
It's a nice
camera,
hat,
so I
but
thought,
it's like a
it's all right.
vacation hat. It's like a vacation hat.
well, talking with you is like a vacation for me, Professor Thurman. This is a
That's very
vacation.
good. I like
Eric,
that.
Eric is having
The
fun.
Buddha was what they call a shramana. And
Oh,
shramana
really?
is like someone who goes to an ashram. That means, like a place
Oh.
to rest. So it has the shram means to seek something and to seek rest and peace. So people translate it as ascetic because they think, oh, gee, he left his palace and his harem and his wife, and etc. So he's really depriving himself. And of course, he did in his own history. First, he did spend time as an ascetic. But I translate shramana as vacationer.
Oh.
That's what it means. Someone who's going on a vacation, and we all need that. And we all need to have more fun, have a vacation, and we need to run our societies in such a way that people have more vacation, and they don't feel stressed out, and they, like I have a plan for Joe Manchin's West Virginia.
Oh,
So, First
okay.
of all, I want them all to read "Wisdom is Bliss."
That's a good
very
idea right
carefully.
there.
Starting with Joe himself. I will go down there, and I hope he'll invite me on his boat. And he lives on a boat there in the Potomac. And
Do you have
give him a copy of the book, and hopefully he'll read it.
Just
And
tell
then
him that you
West
have
Virginia.
some opportunity for him to make some kind of weird corporate wheeler dealing, and then just surprise him with the book, Professor Thurman.
Well,
He'll invite you down
yeah,
if you
maybe,
say
but
that.
No, I have a corporate plan for him. The
Oh,
corporate plan is that he will make West Virginia into the Switzerland of the East Coast and all the hard driving, stressed out cities where people can go and they'll shut down all the coal mines where nobody wants to go digging in the dirt there and get all black faced and get lung diseases and God knows what. And all the coal mining families will be given jobs to plant the most magnificent garden everywhere, shutting down those mines, cleaning up all the polluted, streams and everything. A few billion, 30 billion for that. And then billions more to build the fabulous sanatoria, spas, massage parlors, fabulous, beautiful, athletic training, yoga centers, whatever is needed. And it'll be the big mansion. Mansion will be the patron saint of the happiness industry that will be based in West Virginia. And everyone goes up from DC. They only work 4-day weeks, because there's not much to do because everybody's pretty content in the whole country. Everybody leaves all the workshops and the factories and things, and they do 4 hour, 3 hours, so they can employ more people. They have 3-hour work weeks, 3-day work weeks, and they go up to West Virginia and they drop money, and all the West Virginians become massage therapists and healers and psychiatrists and yogis and yoginis. And it's going to be great.
it's like the
I
mansion.
I need access. I need to see him. If you know Joe.
Well, as long as there's a kickback for him and his daughter, you can get the mansion.
The kickback is the whole state of West Virginia as a paradise.
Yeah.
We'll make it into a really happy place, really wealthy, happy, flourishing, and a beacon like the Tibet of the East Coast, the Switzerland of the East Coast. It's a mountainous region. They put the tops back on the mountains, that they shaved off for coal, and make it nice. But have like football pitches up there, and play ladies field hockey. His daughter can be the coach, No, he really have a happy time. What does he want to be, like a Democratic a pseudo-democratic senator in name
Yeah.
only, in a Republican crazed state because of the poverty and the fact that that industry is over because of the global overheating and so on. And what's the point? He's 73 years old. It's time to retire and have a happy time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, be the person who brought the goods back to his people. You know, so
Well, I
be
guess,
like
like,
Moses. He'll be the Moses of West Virginia.
doubling back, I guess, on the happy time, Professor Thurman. So
What?
just
What?
doubling back on the happy time. The
Yes.
other part that hit me when you were talking about fun,
Yes.
pulling it all together, was sort of this Tantra question. What I feel like there might be a resistance in some people,
Yes.
to fun would be like, I think when they think of Buddhism, they're worried, like almost what your friend was saying with the Vaseline or something, that their life on the path level won't be full. You won't
Yes.
have a full and rich life. And I was just, for me, I might have wrestled with this question a little bit personally too. Can you have a Buddhist life that's full and rich? I don't know what
Yeah.
you think about him. I happen to like the Japanese poet Ikkyu.
Oh, I love you, Q. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, he's really talking about, a spiritual path. There's serious poems, but there's also poems that are about love. There's poems about sex that are
Yes,
pretty
he was
saucy.
great.
There's poems about drinking, but I had a couple of his verses, he's really talking about a full life. So he says something like, I was like an old leafless tree until we met. So he's writing about love. Green
Yes.
buds burst out and blossom. Now that I have you, I'll never forget what I owe you. That's one of his love poems. So he's talking
That's
about a
beautiful.
rich, full life. He has
Yes.
another one about his daughter where he says, watching my 4-year-old daughter dance, I cannot break free of her. And every
Oh,
parent has had those feelings. So yeah,
that's lovely.
I know what you think about that, but I mean, obviously you've lived a full life yourself. I think there's this concern of people that a Buddhist path or a spiritual path will mean that you'll have to be, you won't get a full life. And I think that's a concern
Well,
for
that's
Americans.
what's-
Is that
that's
something
what
you
I'm
see
trying to
too?
correct. That's
Yeah.
why I'm saying super education, mega fun, super fun. And, like Zen, like you said you had fun doing Zen.
Yeah.
And you did, and because you could drop out all of the different things, and you could like, watch the little the ice forming on the little outdoor stream, and you could shiver in a cold shower at 4 a.m. before you had to meditate, and etc. And then if you slumped in when you're meditating, there someone whacked you with a stick, and you had a sting
True.
on the back, and it made you zapped you right up. And it's exciting. Did you ever see the movie Enlightenment Guaranteed?
Oh, no, I don't think I've ever seen that.
No.
You should see that. It's actually in German with subtitles. Erleuchten
Oh.
garantiert. And it's about these two brothers who go to try to find a Zen center in Japan. Actually, one of them tries to do that. The other one is just screws up his marriage and his business and everything, and then runs after his brother. So they both end up there. They lose their passports. They have all this terrible thing. And then they finally find the Zen center, and then they're doing all they thought they would just meditate, but they have all these rituals, and they have to rush out and they wash themselves in a cold stream outside, and they sweep and they do all this, and they really get into it, and it's total fun. It's so fun. And they end up in a tent. They leave the Zen center, they end up in it. I won't say what happens, but because you really enjoy it. It's such a fun movie. Talk about fun. And it shows how much fun the Zen people have. With all their little bells and ding, 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 and walking this way and bringing that, and go there and eating. And it's amazing. It's a German one, but it's just, you'll love it. You really will. You really
So
like it.
how did that work out for you?
So my point
Yeah.
is, yes, people, the problem is the reason they may think that Buddhism will make them not have a full life is only that they're not having a full life anyway. They're even the ones who say they're born, actually being born very wealthy is a real hardship. I don't know anyone who was born with a silver spoon who wasn't pretty miserable, actually. Occasionally they would kind of, I'm gonna buy this or that, and they're gonna go someplace, but basically then they're never satisfied with whatever it is. And they're always, I knew one person who would get on a plane in the first class, but think there was a better seat somewhere else in the first class, and then call the person and say, do you know who I am? And try to rebook the seat and switch with someone else in the first class, because the one they're in was not what they thought was the best one, etc. Not content in that seat, and the whole life was like that, kind of.
They're almost
getting
like
better, getting better now.
human
So-
beings stuck in
the
that
point is,
jealous
I'm
God
trying to
mode or
correct
something.
the idea, that Buddhism is a religion that you have to convert to get anything out of it, and B, and the Dalai Lama, if he's the most major figure in world Buddhism, which I sort of everyone would sort of say, not that he's the head of everything, because they don't have heads like that, and he doesn't want to be, and people don't need him to be, but in one way he's kind of like the world leader of Buddhism, because he's made it known to so many people in a good way, and he doesn't want them to be Buddhists. He wants people to be whatever their grandmother is, but he wants them to do it in a lighter way. He wants them to be happy and kind and enjoy themselves and help others enjoy themselves and be transformed. He has a center that a monk who was a devotee of his founded at MIT, called the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values. And that's what he wants. He doesn't want Buddha. It's not a center for Buddhists. It's just, like be whatever, but don't be miserable and don't make others miserable. That's his main thing. And that's what Buddha wanted for people. And he was successful about it, actually, in his own country. And I think worldwide, his force still glows. He's still present from a Buddhist point of view. He didn't just disappear. He's not like the Lone Ranger. Who was that masked man? Where did he go? No, he's got one bad guy, but more bad guys will come. No, he left that body to give a teaching, because he didn't want to keep that body after a certain time, but he's present. And many, many such beings are present helping. And, Westerners are beginning, Protestant Westerners, who were deprived of all kind of lushness in life, because that was associated with the papists, like a bright red robe and a really all enveloping ritual.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode with Professor Robert Thurman, titled CTFU. Be sure to be on the lookout for the second half of our conversation, coming out very soon. For Eric, this is Daniel. We'll get you in the next one. Peace.
I want you to get together. I want you to get put your hands together one time. I want you to get together. I want you to get together.